Welcome to China Tech Talk, a weekly discussion of technology and startups here in China. I am John Artman, editor-in-chief of TechNode, and as always, I'm joined by Matthew Brennan, founder of China Channel. So Matt, you're actually in Brussels right now. So what are you doing halfway around the world? What does this have to do with China?
Yeah, we're going international. Eh? Yeah, I'm in Brussels today. I'm doing a little tour of Europe, and I hope the sound quality is not affected too much. But yeah, just talking about WeChat, doing trainings, and today I'll be down at the European Union building and doing something with the CEO of C-Trip for some people down there. Yeah, it's good. I mean, everybody is. This is why people are listening to this podcast, because China technology is affecting the whole world, and people need to know about it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny you mentioned WeChat training, because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Actually, and we're talking about kind of going off of some of the discussion that we talked about last week with the Apple episode, because there is that tension between Apple and their ecosystem, their app store, and some of what WeChat is trying to do, in particular in regards to in regards to the mini programs. So we thought that it'd be good to kind of go a little bit more in depth. So talk a little bit more about what WeChat is doing. And some possibilities about where they might be going with their application, and even perhaps into the future, maybe into hardware or other types of services. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about last week, we didn't really get to it, was looking at WeChat. So again, the tension between Apple and WeChat. And so if WeChat wanted to decouple from Apple, in a sense, they would have to make their own hardware. But at the same time, it almost seems like they would become a bit kind of like a Google, where they're a frenemy, a partner, but also a competitor. And so Matt, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, like, do you think that WeChat is like, we're going to see a WeChat phone anytime soon?
It's possible. I think what WeChat team are doing is device neutral right now. So it's sitting on top of the hardware. You can log off of WeChat on your phone, log back in on your iPad. It's very mobile centric. There is a desktop version, but it's very much a secondary experience that is in many ways crippled deliberately. It's not meant to be a desktop experience, although you can use WeChat on the desktop, and I think both of us are actually probably logged in right now on that. It's very common.
Yeah.
But that is not meant to be a primary desktop experience. That's supporting what is a mobile-centric application. And what everyone globally is looking, it's not just WeChat, right? This is a global issue where everyone's saying, okay, the mobile phone is mature. Mobile has been around for a long time now, and what is the next device? What is the next shift here? Are we moving into glasses? Are we moving into Magic Leap type mixed reality? Are we moving into VR? Are we just going to have a chip in our brain? All of these are possibilities, and there's probably stuff out there we haven't even imagined yet, but nobody knows for sure where it's going. So when we say WeChat is going to be moving into hardware, that's very likely at some point. I feel the closest, but this is not going to happen tomorrow, though. Let me be clear about this. I see this when I say moving into some kind of device. I see that happening 2 years, 3 years down the road. Not today. And what that device is, I don't think WeChat team even knows. And I think Alan John was on the record saying recently that any product manager who says that they have a plan for the next year, they have a roadmap that they're 100% clear about what's going to happen for their product in next year, they can't be. They must be lying. Basically, there's no way you can plan, right? Things just move too fast, and there's too many unknown variables. You have a philosophy. You have product values that you stick to. And I think the WeChat team has very, very strong product values and a very clear vision of what their product's about. But then how that actually plays out in terms of, mini programs is a great example here. How things actually play out when rubber hits the road, nobody can tell.
Yeah, I was going to say, because they have to have some type of roadmap. They have to have some direction that they're trying to go in. I mean, looking at one of their recent advertisements for many programs, the way that you've interpreted that is that they are kind of teasing this augmented reality function that is going to be tied to QR codes. They haven't released that, but certainly it does seem that type of feature is on their roadmap, and we might see that within the year. So to say that, yes, of course, we know exactly what's going to happen, from their point of view, to say we know exactly what's going to happen in the next year is perhaps a bit difficult. But at the same time, they do have a direction that they are trying to go in. And so kind of, as you said, with the hardware for WeChat, what would that be? And would it even make sense to try to make, a WeChat branded phone if the phone is already becoming so mature? I mean, there's not much you can innovate on the phone any longer. Yeah. And, for WeChat to go and try to get into a product category that doesn't have much room for growth, it's a saturated market. Pretty much everyone who's going to buy a smartphone already has, and if they haven't, then they will very soon. And to get into competition with Samsung, with Apple, with Huawei, seems like it would not be a very good choice. And so that's kind of the question, where if they don't do a phone, what would they do? Would it be a watch? Would it be glasses? Would it be something that I have no idea what it, something that's I'm not even capable of imagining right now. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for WeChat to kind of create their own physical platform, but it would have to be not a smartphone.
And not a phone as we know it now. But if we look at what Snapchat's done in the States, I think that's really, really interesting. I think that's the closest role model that we've got right now for how something like this could work. Obviously, WeChat has far more power than Snapchat. In their home market of China, but Snapchat, even from their position, was able to successfully flip what they're doing into a hardware product, one that is, it's not going to take over the world, but it's a success, definitely. I think they've managed to make it work, and so a messaging platform that's moved into what are sort of augmented reality empowered sort of hardware glasses. That's the closest role model we have. WeChat could do a lot more, but certainly it's possible that they could do that. The direction they're moving into with mini programs is clearly trying to mimic Apple's ecosystem in many, many ways. And I think they're a very progressive team. They're trying to lead now. They're trying to lead in terms of they've been leading for a long time in China in terms of innovation and pushing forward the forefront of the trends of what's happening on mobile in China. But now I think they've reached a stage where they have to start reimagining what's possible, and that's exactly what mini programs is about, because they're essentially saying, okay, let's forget that apps ever happened. Let's forget that the iPhone and the paradigm that we've all been thinking of mobile has been set by Apple. It was set by Steve Jobs almost a decade ago. Let's imagine that didn't happen, and what would it look like right now? And what they're going for is apps can be everywhere. The app store is in the real world, and that's where the augmented reality sort of vision comes in. How that actually plays out, I don't think they even know themselves.
Yep.
But the concept there is that apps should be everywhere. They should appear when you just need them and disappear. There shouldn't be this whole clunky install, update process, download. It's ridiculous. That's a concept that comes from a time that's over now, a historical period which doesn't exist anymore. We need to think afresh of how we can interact with technology. And broadly speaking, the offline world and the online worlds are coming closer together. They're becoming more integrated. That's clearly the direction that everything is going in. And that's what they're trying to. Where they're trying to go as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I have to wonder to what degree, how difficult this has been, because you look at QQ, for example. And one of the reasons that QQ itself is just the Chinese version of ICQ. They took a proven technology and localized it to the China market, much like a lot of successful Chinese companies have done in the past. But the way that they were able to be successful was with QQ, but it was almost by accident, because at the time, when they were looking to monetize on that, just the ad networks, ad distribution just wasn't really there yet in China. And so in order to monetize, they had to sell virtual items. And through that, they were able to leverage that into creating games where you could also buy virtual items as well. And that's really kind of what they are as a company. It is a consumer-focused social and gaming company. And so, on the one hand, maybe they've been able to innovate in terms of how to get people to spend more money inside of an application or inside of a game. What types of virtual items are interesting to consumers. Similar to stickers on WeChat. Which you can purchase as well. And so, in terms of them being able to find the right cultural hooks or the right consumer hooks, in order to appeal to their main customer, I think is, obviously they can do that, and they've been able to innovate on that. But when it comes to technological innovation, when it comes to we're talking about hardware. When it comes to innovating on hardware, I have to wonder how comfortable that type of transition has been for them, and kind of what kind of growing pains they've had to go through that. Because you look at the way that I think about WeChat more and more is WeChat has a lot of parallels with Google, I think, in the sense that they are an engineering-led company, and that engineering-led company has led them to where they are right now. But more and more. But the engineering wasn't necessarily about technically innovating. It was about scaling up. It was about creating consumer facing products. So it seems to me that they're learning how to pivot away towards more technically minded products. So products that actually need a bit more technical innovation. And they're also having to move away a little bit from their consumer-based business, where their main customer is no longer going to be the consumer, but it's going to be advertisers and other businesses. And so far, it seems like they're doing that pretty gracefully. But again, I really do have to wonder kind of internally, what that debate has been like, and how, and whether or not that's caused discomfort.
Are making more money from adverts, and they are making more money from cloud services, but I question whether it's actually the focus now. They're very much a product-driven team. That's not going to change, and it shouldn't. The power of Tencent has always been to having been able to build products that people love and have all of the users on their platform. and reduce friction and make things easy for people to do. And they're not an advertising-driven company, and I don't see the advertising business model. Obviously, there's all their investors always have a go at them and pretty much hound them to make more money from advertising. And because they look at what Facebook's doing, and they look at what Google's doing, and they're making so much money on adverts. But I question whether the Chinese consumer actually, whether that's a sustainable business model in the long term. I think that it's clear that the WeChat team and Tencent higher management don't see that as what the direction they truly want to go in. Otherwise, they would have made a lot more efforts in that area. They've been extremely careful for WeChat advertising not to increase the ad inventory load. You can see one advert per day on Moments newsfeed. That's the maximum. The average is lower than that. When you compare that with Facebook, it's like night and day. Facebook is they've pushed the advertising so far. I think they said one of their statements recently is that they let the investors know that they can't actually release any more inventory, right, because it's just too much advertising. They've reached the limit of what's possible without absolutely annoying everyone, and I think a lot of people are annoyed. As a user of a Facebook product, it's a pretty crappy experience, I think, to have so many adverts in there, even if they are highly targeted, so that you're seeing adverts that should be for products that you're interested in. I don't think WeChat's ever going to do anything like that. Certainly not in the short term and the mid term. It's certainly not what Alan Zheng is interested in. That's for sure. So yes, they're doing more stuff with companies, and for example, Starbucks is the big one, right? Last year, their cooperation. That was the clearest example of what they're working together with companies. Mobike is another good one, but Mobike is a technology company,
right?
So Mobike's not your typical brand, but Mobike and WeChat team have been working really closely together. And so Starbucks is probably a better example. Starbucks is more of a traditional brand, as it were. It's not a tech company.
A few big differences, for example, between Starbucks and Mobike. In particular, Tencent has not invested in Starbucks, and so they don't have that similar relationship as they do with Mobike. Starbucks, as you say, is a traditional brand in a sense. I mean, their business is brick and mortar, selling coffee, selling snacks and things like that. And then also, I think on top of that, they're a foreign company as well. I mean, if you look at Starbucks, it wasn't until earlier was it late last year that they started to accept WeChat as a form of payment. And before that, the only type of non-cash, non-credit card payment that they would accept was Apple Pay. And now they only accept WeChat. They don't actually accept Alipay. And so I think that in and of itself was a pretty big win in a sense, both for Starbucks and for WeChat. But again, Starbucks is not a technology company, but they're super popular. And so I think it was a great way for WeChat to make a partnership with a company that seems on the surface at least to be a bit difficult to work with, in the sense that they're going to have fairly high requirements about what types of partners they're going to work with, what kind of benefits they're actually going to receive. Unlike Mobike, for example, where they're getting tons of support. They're a startup. They need mentors. They need people who are experienced with creating these products and integrating them into WeChat. And so for Starbucks, obviously it's a pretty big win. But then, with the focus of the WeChat team on that product, bringing in an advertisement, a partnership with a traditional brand, with a non-technology company, and again a foreign company on top of that, that does seem like they would be worried that this would affect the user experience, or that there would be some type of backlash. And to be honest, when they released the coffee gift cards on WeChat, I was expecting a little bit more of a backlash from the netizens, but it didn't really seem to happen all that much.
No, I don't think so. Fact is, what they did with Starbucks is not a huge change to the app. It was a temporary promotion. For most users, it didn't affect their experience of using WeChat at all. The way they cooperated with this brand was very light. We're not talking about typically how other apps might cooperate with brands. In China, it would be something more similar. Okay, you pay us money, we'll throw an advert in our user's face when they open the app for 5 seconds. That's a far more typical advertising brand promotion,
right.
For on mobile for China. I don't think WeChat has any interest in doing that type of promotion, because it's one that's, it's more of a sort of, in my mind, a more traditional Facebook, Google type, let's just throw adverts at people to monetize paradigm, which I think is an old paradigm. I don't think it's the future of what mobile, what the technology is about. The way WeChat's doing it is far more interesting and far more forward-looking. So for them, it's very, very clear that payments is far more important. I mean, what they're going for with WeChat Pay is going to be ultimately far more lucrative than anything they could make with advertising bucks, I feel. So the direction for Starbucks, yes, it was important. Yes, it's a foreign brand. Even I think Pony Ma was on the record he put something on his Moments saying, it's very, very difficult for a WeChat team to actually promote a brand. It's saying, oh, this one must be special, sort of teasing people that something's coming. Yes, it was special. I think it was definitely an element there of putting 2 fingers up to Apple in terms of, oh, by the way, the partner that you got for Apple Pay exclusively is now come over to us.
Yeah.
So there's an element of that, and then I think it's much more about the virtual gifting. So the brands were aligned in terms of Starbucks wanted to do gifting of coffees within WeChat. That was the core promotion. That was actually, I think, probably WeChat was much more interested in that part of it, because that idea of gifting objects, using a messaging app to send a coffee to your friend, or WeGold, which is another recent promotion where you can send gold to somebody over, a virtual gold. To your friends. This kind of thing is what they're interested in. That you can not just send money on WeChat, but you can send objects. This is a very, very this has huge potential.
Well, Matt, can you just explain that for a second? I mean, so how exactly does the gold hongbao work? I mean, are you actually sending people real gold, or is it just you are sending people an amount of money that gold is worth at a certain point in time?
Yeah, so it's essentially very similar to the red packet feature, but it's for gold. But the gold is virtual gold, so you're pretty much making an investment in gold, but it's a micro investment. It can be tiny. It can be just much less than $1, and you're buying a virtual amount of gold. And sending that to friends over WeChat. So it's essentially an investment tool, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like a red packet. It feels like a game. It feels like something that is a present, basically, a sort of social gifting. And the campaigns that they've done with that product are based around things like Valentine's Day, things like May 20th, Wu Erling Festival, which is another basically Valentine's Day. There's a lot of Valentine's Days in China. There's far too many Valentine's Days.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's based around that. It's a gifting. So the potential there is quite big for that, and I think it's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, I have to agree. And again, kind of going back to QQ and things, I think this is something that Tencent as a company has shown that they are very good at. They've been very good at understanding Chinese consumer culture, and kind of understanding what types of features we're gonna get people interested and gonna get a lot of traction. I mean, the red packets that you talked about, I mean, when they were first introduced, it took off. It took off, and a lot of it was created in order to get people to hook into WeChat Pay, because the only way that you could actually claim a red packet was if you connected your bank card or your credit card to WeChat Pay. But I mean, even now, Alipay is still leading in mobile payments, but WeChat is killing it with red packets. Anytime that there's an occasion to send red packets, WeChat is the clear winner. And so again, I think it really does show that Tencent as a company, they're very good at understanding what is it that people want from their social products, and in particular, what they really want is a way to give gifts, a way to very, very frictionless, very easy. People can show how much they care about other people, and that's the thing I think that's important to remember, is that China it's the Chinese culture. It's based around gift giving. We talk about guanxi relationships. We talk about this idea of in what some people might call corruption, but it's all based on gift giving. When a relative comes to visit my house, they're going to bring a thing of milk for the kids, and maybe some. If it's the Mid-Autumn Festival, they're going to bring some mooncakes. And the same thing, if we go to visit a good friend or a relative, we're always going to bring gifts. And more than likely, they're going to have gifts for us. And so this is something that is a large part of Chinese culture. And so I think that's really important to point out. Like, that's one of the reasons that that promotion with Starbucks, I think, was so successful. As you say, there was that synergy. But the thing is, I mean, this is kind of going back a little bit to mini programs as well, because to my mind, and this is kind of how I think WeChat is a little bit like Google in a sense, where with the mini programs, it was kind of a failed launch, I think, where they've been teasing these mini programs, these mini apps for months. They're finally released, and they're not really what they should have been. To my mind, what mini programs should have been at launch was automatically connecting offline to online, like actually showing everyone what the potential of these things actually are. Instead, it's 3 or 4 months down the road, and finally we're starting to get a glimpse of what they could actually be. And so, at launch, they should have had a Starbucks mini app where you could, scan the QR code and get a coupon, and just have these things at these physical stores where you were able to use these mini apps, but they don't seem to have done that. And honestly, I have to wonder why. Was it because the feature wasn't ready to be implemented? Was it because it was too difficult to form these partnerships? Because it seems like with what they've teased with the AR feature, they're ready to kick this off with McDonald's, with Starbucks, and with other offline brands.
Yeah, well, the feature is extremely ambitious, and it's essentially, to make it work, there has to be an ecosystem. It's very similar to thinking how official accounts started off. When WeChat started doing official accounts, there weren't millions of official accounts from day one. It took time for people to realize the potential, and for them to open up what official accounts could do. They started off very, very basic. Official accounts were used by celebrities originally, like singers, to communicate with their fan base. They weren't really used by businesses from day one. And then when you look at what Apple achieved with the App Store, App Store did not have millions of apps in it from day one. I actually, I've got to go back. I did remember reading an article recently that was talking about the beginning of the App Store and how, or certainly the beginning of the iPhone, where there was a period for a couple of months where the iPhone had been launched, but it wasn't like getting huge traction at the, in the first month or two, and then it suddenly like took off like crazy. So, often when these big ideas come out, I think official accounts for WeChat was a bigger idea, a much bigger idea than mini programs, and that's a good role model here. That this will take time, especially now when you start something off like mini programs. I think WeChat team has confused a lot of people with their positioning. Even people in the tech community are like confused over what this product actually is. What is it about? And the key at the beginning was, for the first few months, everyone was saying there's no way to get traffic to these mini programs. So they had to resolve that. It's clear they have changed their positioning. It's clear that they've had to go back and rethink some of what they've been what they were trying to go for at the beginning. An example of that is that the mini programs were not meant to be opened up online, so the QR codes were deliberately blocked so that you could open it up within an article, and now that's changed, and that's quite different from what they were saying in January. So yes, they have definitely changed their implementation of the idea. That's without question. But the key here is that I don't think the expectation was ever that this was going to from day one be a huge thing. I think that's completely unrealistic. Of course, when you read lots of articles online and people talk about it, people never, the media will never present it that way. There'll be, it's launching, and when something launches, you expect it to be ready and amazing.
There's supposed to be fireworks,
Right. But having said that, I've always been very bullish on it because it's very clear from the top level management staff that they have had a clear idea of where they're going, and that they are putting massive resources into this. Now, you can say, well, there's lots of examples of companies that have put massive resources into stuff and it's failed. And that's true for, WeChat's mostly failed in terms of international expansion. Right. So it's not like they succeed at everything. But why I feel this almost can't fail in many ways is because essentially all they're trying to do is drive traffic from official accounts, from service accounts into these new mini programs. And they control all the levers, essentially, to make that happen. So it's just a matter of WeChat finding the right way to drive. They already have humongous traffic, and all they're trying to do is drive this traffic into this new form of technology, this mini program. They're trying to, and they're being very careful about it. But if it's not working, if they're not driving enough traffic, then all they need to do is make changes, because they control the ecosystem completely. They could shut down official accounts if they wanted to. Obviously, they're not going to do that, but they could if they wanted to. They have complete control. It's their garden. So as long as the messages from high management are consistent in saying that this is the future of WeChat, this is the direction we want to take, and we're willing to put resources into this to make it happen, then they're going to make it happen. It's just how much they need to compromise in terms of perhaps disrupting the user experience a little bit more than they're used to, or spending a bit more money in order to get people to get interest, or whatever it is. But they'll try and do it in a way that keeps to their values, keeps to their product values and their philosophies.
There is some confusion. I mean, because you have the surface accounts and you have the official accounts, and it does seem that in a sense, WeChat is trying to cannibalize traffic away from those into mini programs, and they haven't done a very good job of explaining it. And I think you make some really good points around that. And at the same time, they have these open classes that they offer on a regular basis that talk about these features and kind of how to use them. And so they are trying to educate people. And it is kind of funny because I think this is one of the big challenges for any technology company. Like when you can see that the future of your product or of your company is going to be based around, this huge shift in user behavior or in product behavior, then you really need to push people to start doing that and really kind of get them used to it. And so in a sense, I guess it was good that they didn't just, shut down service accounts and official accounts and say, okay, now everyone has to use mini programs. But again, at the same time, what they're supposed to be used for wasn't quite clear. And I have to wonder from a brand perspective as well, to what degree they've been convinced of its use, because again, WeChat, they're very protective of the user experience to the detriment of advertisers, to the detriment of brands. And so one does have to wonder, to what degree they were able to make concessions or to what degree they had to make compromises with like McDonald's, KFC, Starbucks, and so on, in order to kind of get them actually on board. But that's the thing. I mean, like if mini programs do actually take off, WeChat is just going to dominate even more than they are right now. WeChat is the entry point for so many people into the new O2O economy of ride hailing, bike sharing, mobile payments, and things like that. That if they can again connect that loop of offline to online, I mean, there's pretty much no reason to use any other application that's involved with an O2O service. And so we're talking about food delivery, we're talking about maybe even e-commerce, and so and all these different things that are powered because the offline ecosystem is not robust enough in China that people go online to fulfill their offline needs. But if people can go offline to fulfill those needs through an online intermediary, then they definitely will do that. And that is about where Skype stopped working for us. But I think that you can see where we were going with this, and unfortunately, we did start covering some old ground. And so if you are interested in hearing more about mini programs, you can look back to episode 2, where we talked more about mini programs and how they are just set to dominate the future for WeChat. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, we would really appreciate it if you left a review on iTunes. There is a link to the tutorial in the show notes of this episode on how to actually do that. Also, if you use Overcast, you can just very easily press the star on this episode page inside the app. This really helps us to get more listeners, and it's a great way to show your support.